I know that everybody that currently touches these words calls themselves an AI company. It's fine. We get more clients, we get more funding. There are unfortunately many definitions of AI. The most popular definition, I think, is the weakest definition, which is getting computers to do things that humans can do. Over the past 3 years, we've managed to get machines to correspond in natural language, to recognize objects and images. And when we get machines to behave like humans, because humans are the most intelligent thing we know in the universe, we assume that that's intelligence. Now, if you read these books, you'll realize that humans are not that intelligent. That's a different conversation. But if I built a robot that operated like a mouse, or a dolphin, that would be the most intelligent thing that we've ever seen. So benchmarking machines against humans, again, is a very silly thing to do. Using human beings as the pinnacle of intelligence is not sensible. There's a very nice, elegant definition of intelligence from the 80s, which is this. It's goal-directed adaptive behavior. It's building systems that make decisions, learn about whether those decisions are good or bad, adapt themselves so next time you make better decisions. And if I'm being totally honest with ourselves, most of the systems that we see in production don't adapt themselves. Most of the systems, if I held to this definition, I would argue are not AI. Now, that's a bit controversial, and it's not very helpful. And the point is really that if looking at AI through definitions, looking at AI through technology is not a very helpful thing to do. So I'm going to give you a different framework, a different way of thinking about AI, and I'm going to try to bring it to life with respect to marketing. So before I do a little bit of a history lesson, so this is AI in the 60s and 70s. This is Socrates. Socrates is famous for inspiring the Socratic method. If I say to you that Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, I can infer that Socrates is mortal. I can create new knowledge. And AI in the 60s and 70s was writing down lots of things that we know about the world and then trying to infer new knowledge. And it didn't really work. It didn't really scale. This is now having a renaissance. We call this agentic computing. We'll talk about this later. But anyway, in the 80s and 90s, a new type of AI came along that's modeled how our brains work. This is the brain of a bumblebee. My PhD 20 years ago was trying to model the brain of a bumblebee in a machine. Bumblebees have 1 million brain cells. Their brains can fit on the end of a needle. Bumblebees do amazing things. They talk to each other. They navigate 3D worlds. They solve problems. They don't handle windows very well, but ultimately, they're very smart creatures. And the question was, can you model 1 million brain cells in a machine? 20 years ago, we couldn't, but we can now model billions of brain cells, and we call these large language models. Now, I would argue that large language models are really good at knowing things about the world. They're really good at telling you what they know about the world through imagery, through text. They are not good at making predictions. They are not good at making complex decisions. This is not a panacea that solves all problems across your organization. Okay, it's really important that you choose the right algorithms. And actually, even as these large language models get smarter, I would argue that 5-6 years ago, they operated a bit like toddlers. They just produced gibberish. In 2022, ChatGPT was launched, and I would argue, as I mentioned earlier, this operates like an intoxicated graduate. Almost half of what ChatGPT came out with was wrong. It was made up. And as these machines get smarter, so now we're starting to see master's level machines that can do rudimentary reasoning. Soon we'll have a PhD level where you can give it a complex task. It will break that task down and solve the problem. Eventually we'll have AIs creating science, doing science, creating new knowledge. And eventually we'll have a professor that's going out there identifying questions that we haven't identified and then trying to solve them. So by the end of this decade, we're most likely to have a professor in our pocket. Now, how quickly these technologies enter our organizations is up to us. But as I mentioned earlier, even professors can't solve a media plan. I'm going to talk about this later on. It's really important that even as these technologies progress, they're not necessarily the right technologies to solve the problems in your business. So I look at AI not through definitions or through technologies. I look at it through applications. I believe there are 6 types of problem that exist in any industry that can be mapped to one of these applications. So I'll say this again. All of the frictions that you experience in your organization can be mapped to one of these applications. Okay, the first one actually is task automation. The fact is, using very simple algorithms, if-then-else statements, macros, robotic process automation, using very simple algorithms can drive a huge amount of value. You don't need to gravitate to new shiny technologies like machine learning and generative AI. The second application is content generation. Now, because of large language models, you all have the ability to create any generic content, imagery, text, soon video, soon sound. The battleground for organizations, particularly in our industry, is not creating generic content.